Welcome to the Outer Realm with Michelle DeRoche and Amelia Pisano. Airing live on the United Public Radio Network, 105.3 FM in New Orleans.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Thursday night segment of the Outer Realm. We are broadcasting here on the United Public Radio Network 105.3 FM from the beautiful city of New Orleans. We are fully sponsored by the amazing people over at Folgers Coffee who have been a part of our journey from the very beginning and hopefully for many years to come. No pressure, Folgers, no pressure. Anyway, big thank you also to our second sponsor, Dr. Snick, the sonic surgeon, aka Justin Snicker, who is an award-winning composer of Halloween, horror, sci-fi, and dark wave electronic music. So, of course, right up our alley. His music can be found anywhere that good music can be found. Amazon, Spotify, iTunes, Bandcamp, you name it, it's there. So we are having a pre-recorded show at the moment, and we welcome the return of Shawn Williamson and Wayne Murphy, and they're going to be discussing a new discovery. I think it's sort of one of those things where it's the gift that keeps on giving. So it's basically, you know, we're going to have to be careful what is said because there's a lot of people interested at the moment, but we're going to give you as much information as possible. So in order, of course, to participate on the show tonight, basically, you'll have to hit up all the regular platforms, and I will go over that with you guys tonight before we go live, of course, and or when we're just going live before we play the show, and you can catch us on there. Amelia and I, of course, will be in the chat room. You'll notice she's not with me today. She's a little bit under the weather, but from what I understand, she is absolutely having her Folgers. Bam, right there, having her Folgers, and she's going to be asking questions from the chat room, because for those of you who subscribe to the Outer Realm YouTube, and if you don't, you should be, because you'd be able to be catching this show live right now. But a special treat tonight also is we're going to be streaming live on the Team Templar North America group page. So for our members over there, you're going to have to watch it. And here, yes, we can actually say, oh, there's no wood. Well, it's a forest. This is kind of lots of wood, but you know, I think you guys know where we're going with that, and we're going to leave it right there. So we are waiting for one more guest. We're waiting for Shawn, and that should be in a minute. But in the meantime, we're going to bring on Wayne Murphy, who is ahead of the game. There we are. Hello, hello. How are you?
Hi, Michelle. I'm great. Thanks
Good.
for having us today.
Oh, gosh. Happy to have you on board. We're just waiting for Shawn to arrive. He came and he went. I'm not quite sure what happened, but you know, he should be on in another minute. So hopefully he's just ironing out some stuff over there. So how is it? How's it going over there with you? How hot is it? It's very hot here right now.
It's pretty hot. We had massive storms last night. A lot of homes on the reservation got damaged. There was a lot of trees down. Boulder, the little town nearby, got hit pretty bad.
Wow.
So I didn't hear of any injuries or anything like that, but it sounds like there's a lot of property damage and a lot of loss that way.
Oh no, terrible, terrible. That's not good. I think that storm is making its way this way, actually. So we're battening down the hatches, but we're sort of hoping that it's going to cool things down a little bit as well. So Amelia is going to be asking her questions through the chat room. She's a little bit under the weather today, and I'm hoping at that point I can even respond. We're only streaming on one spot right now, and I can actually respond to her right from the main board, which is really hard when we have it streaming on all these different places, because one comment sort of goes everywhere and people are going, what does this mean? It's like, I might be responding to something in one place and it's like everywhere. People are like, we don't understand. So, yeah. Okay. Looks like Shawn got his link. I was sure he popped on, but so, basically we're going to be discussing the discoveries at Team Templar. And I was just saying, it's like the gift that keeps on giving, right?
Yes. It's I'm really excited to be here today because me and Shawn, we've been working on some big stuff,
right?
And we're going to tell you some good stuff in a roundabout way.
I can't wait. I know it's really difficult because there's so many eyes on the site right now for their own advancements, really, not even well, I'm hoping, and I'm sure there's there's a lot of people who are really rooting for this site because it's so groundbreaking. So I'm really hoping that we will be able to give a fair amount of information, but without giving away too much. There's lots of stuff that's already out there. So
I think everyone will be surprised at some of the things that we're going to tell you today. Me and Shawn have been talking the last couple of days about various things, and there's such a Templar fever right now that people want to know about the Templars, and it's just booming and all over the place, and everybody's just rooting for someone to put this together. And I feel that Shawn Williamson and myself can do that. There's a lot of old information going around that's being rehashed, replayed, re-looked at. But I can tell you, Michelle, that Team Templar has put together some really astounding information. And boy, if someone wanted to ever produce a great show, to be on the cutting edge of information that's never been seen or talked about,
right?
My gosh, this is the place to be.
Well, I know that you have, like, both of you guys have discussed this with me to a degree. We've spent long hours going through all of this stuff, and I have to say, it's really mind-blowing. It feels like to me that it's a missing link somewhere, because for those who are really interested in the Knights Templar, there's so much throughout Europe. There's so much even in Eastern Canada. And I think even with the Lost Relics of the Knights Templar with Carl Cookson and Hamilton White, they brought forward a lot of that information here to North America as well. I think it renewed an interest, I think, in the topic, because all of a sudden I started seeing a whole lot of other shows coming up, and even old shows and documentaries being replayed, which tells me there's a huge interest in it, and people want to know. And this is something, the Wisconsin site is something that's for us in North America.
Yes.
Right?
One of the most amazing things about this in the Wisconsin site is, being a police investigator, retired, you work backwards through these things. And I started working backwards from the site. How would the Templars have gotten here, their past and everything? It led me up through Nova Scotia, the St. Lawrence, and other rivers. And I was really kind of having a hard time jumping the waters, to make that tie-in. And then when Shawn Williamson comes along, oh my gosh, talk about synchronicity. It's just like one day he'll send me something. Have you ever heard of this? And I'll say, yeah, I just been working on that. And I'll send him what I have. And then a couple of days later, I'll send him something. And he says, oh, I've been working on it years ago and I forgot about it. And And so we pick it back up and throw it around. And what has happened, and I say the last 6 months, is the stuff that we have come across has now tied the waters together, from Scotland down to the St. Lawrence, to the Mi'kmaq, the Abenaki, the Inuits, and the Native American tribes, and how they all interacted, the symbolism that's tied into these tribes. You'll find a lot of researchers that say, oh, the Templars were never in North America. Well, somebody carved these cross pate in a stone here in Wisconsin, and somebody built this tomb, and somebody built these 3 other sites. And it's just amazing now to have someone like Shawn come along, and from his work over there in Scotland and working with Andrew Sinclair. And Shawn is sitting on one of the most amazing masses of information from Andrew Sinclair that hasn't even been shown to anyone. So we talk about this information and how it ties in. And he's able to send a lot of things with me that no one knows about. It's just him and myself. And this ties into the ships that they used, the symbols, the tattoos on Native Americans, the Templar symbolism. Some of the symbols on the Native Americans, they were even the same symbols in the prison dome, where the Templars were housed. When you start seeing these symbols show up on Native Americans, in the 1500s, and these were not discovered by themselves. These were discovered by French Jesuits who drew these Native Americans by their own hand. So we use a lot of the research out there that hasn't been washed. And what I mean by washed, that hasn't been hidden or just covered up or just don't want to be talked about. So we work very hard to find that research. And I started a little thing on Team Templar called Bits and Pieces, because we find these things hidden and just a whole bunch of information, and they give just enough information that they want it to make it interesting. And Shawn and myself are able to tie this in to a much greater picture and to really expand on it and just take it to a different level.
Right. And you have to be really careful, because from just what I've been observing and being a part of this team and being very diligent about what is shown, there's a lot of eyes on you. And some of it is, how can we say, I guess, trying to, I don't know, save a sinking ship, maybe. I don't know. It just seems to be, there are other projects going on, and it seems like they come to a standstill, and they're looking like, where do we go from here? So that must limit.
Well, there was just a TV show about that.
Right.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I said it has to limit what you can actually put out there, because realistically, if you don't, it just sort of makes it look like, even though it's your discovery, and ends up someplace else, to make it look like it's somebody else's discovery. And like Amelia says, it's because they know it's real, I think, and people start grasping. They know the information is real, and it's stuff that's never been thought of. So what I like about all of this is the fact that you just can't see it. There's a lot of hidden stuff. Oh, there's a man. Hello. You made it. Oh, we've just been recapping. Yeah, there we go. How are you? There we go. Oh, we're cooking. There we go. So, try it again.
No, okay.
Yeah, that's good. Just bring it down just a bit. There we go. Fantastic. Fantastic.
Okay.
There. Good. How are you?
The man of the hour.
Yeah, good.
We were just talking about the sharing of information, and how the two of you have been collaborating very closely on amassing a great amount of information. But it's really sort of sad in a way, because there's so much that can be put out there, and there's so much stuff that can't be, because there are a lot of eyes on you to further their own projects, which takes away from the fact that, this could be your discovery, but if somebody grabs it, it comes out and makes it look like it's not. So you're essentially having to be careful that you're not working to advance somebody else. Right? So what are your thoughts on that? How do you guys get around that? Whoever wants to go first.
Wayne?
Me and Shawn, I was telling Michelle how I'll send an idea to Shawn, and then, when he gets a chance to respond, he said, I was just working on that, and vice versa. We like to say our research is kind of oblique lateral. We look at things so differently than, other researchers would. There's a lot of stuff we look at and we don't discount. And Shawn is sitting on just a ton of information that ties into North America. And we're able to connect this together. And a lot of times we talk about how can we get this out and let people know that we have such great stuff. And it's all linked together now. I think Shawn will agree that we've linked this together. And we're just having a difficult time not going outside and screaming, hey, look what we have, without hurting our investigation.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely, Wayne, Michelle. The thing is, we've got a supernatural dimension going on here, and we haven't been desensitized by heavy academic ivory tower stuff, and that's enabled us to see, a bigger picture coming in from other directions. And it feels like we're fated to, bring out some of this information and fill in a lot of gaps in, the history of the world in many ways. And I think the approach will spread out into other subjects linked to what we're doing, but perhaps not directly linked at the moment. And our kind of talents are kind of interwoven into each other to present a really good research front that's more than a little different, shall we say?
Yes, judging from the meetings that we've had, I would say just a little different. But I have to say that I'm grateful that there's information out there pretty much that the world has never seen, because it's going to be the information that creates the bridge. It's going to be the missing link, I believe, or several missing links. It's not stuff that has been online. It's probably not even stuff that's been in the history books. It's stuff that basically went through research that you were part of, Shawn, that, Andrew Sinclair's research. If you want to talk about that a little bit, just to give the folks an idea of what's coming. And I know you and Wayne can't really divulge a whole lot, but just to give people an idea that there is amazing stuff here in the background.
Yeah. Should I take it away, Wayne, just for the moment?
Yes.
Go ahead. Should I?
Okay.
Yeah. So I was just gonna say that when I was on merchant seaman on the Great Lakes, working for a company called Upper Lake Shipping, I was 18 or something, and I was going all over the Great Lakes, particularly up in Quebec, Trois-Rivières, and past Montreal, where there was a feeling that something had gone on in the past. But I was kind of more interested in having a few beers in Quebec City and stuff like that than doing too much heavy research. But it was actually my father who was a first mate with Algoma Railway boats, and he'd been reading quite a lot of Andrew Sinclair's research, and he later sent me a book, Sword and the Grail, saying, seek this man out, And I thought that was quite, I was on the same page as him. He was researching all this historical stuff. And of course, we're descended from Gun Clan lines. And it felt like something supernatural was happening. And, I connected into this stuff. And lo and behold, I think I got the book, The Sword and the Grail. I think it was first released 1992. I was back in the UK at this moment in time. And I started doing heavy research into this stuff myself. But it wasn't until 1999 when I actually got to meet Andrew Sinclair. Now, that was bizarre because he was in the Clan Sinclair, I was in Clan Gun. I came over from Clan Gun into the Sinclairs because I was working with them on the castle restoration project, kind of as a consultant at the time, along with my own projects. But I was training kids in stonemasonry, people who'd gone astray and stuff. And, the Sinclairs took an interest in that from a charitable point of view. But the Sinclair Games, it was called the Halkirk Games, that's where I met Andrew. And it was just by chance, he was there, he'd driven up from London. And that's how we, and I said, by the way, my father, was a fan of your books and stuff. And he told me to get in touch with you. And that's how it all began. But by that time, I was in the north of Scotland, and I became very involved with the clan. There, at the Sinclair Study Centre, I carved the big statue of Prince Henry Sinclair. And it kind of all folded around 2016, although the Sinclairs are still dedicated to the cause. 2016, fast forward a bit here, because there was a lot of water under the bridge that, I'm going to need a week to discuss about some of the discoveries that we found. But 2016, I'd kind of fallen a bit on hard times. And because I'd, worked with them, done a few favors, I was given license to go and stay in the Sinclair Study Centre before it got passed over to be sold. Ian Sinclair, who ran our Templar organisation there, had passed away, and I went to look after what was left of the library. And I was able to do private research myself. I found so much about what was going on, navigation to the New World, USA. I was reading Gunnar Thompson. I was reading, about the Piri Reis map and the global shapes, the shape of what is the true shape of the planet? How did that affect navigation? And it was quite intense. And I was there for 6 months, but informally, I was the last keeper of the Sinclair Study Centre.
Wow.
A beacon, honor. A beacon or a lighthouse of enlightenment for a lot of people, and many different people coming together to further the cause. And so anyway, fast forward to 2019, and of course Andrew Sinclair, who's an older man now, he's 86, and he passes away and leaves me, asked me to go to London before that, and he says, you can have all my research. It's, and I took a big yeah. Sorry, Michelle. Yeah.
No, I'm just like, wow. No, please continue.
Yeah. So there's absolutely, yeah, because I've been working with him really as a stonemason and a man of stone, as he used to call me, and was involved in a lot of work outside my remit or pay grade as a stonemason, because I had a lot of knowledge about building structures, and I could read stone. I do quite a lot of replication for museums and stuff, but I also validate forgeries, and I'm called in to look at that because I can do it from a technical point of view.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's where we are. I've got all his research. Obviously, I can't go into detail about it until we're ready to ring all the bells.
Right.
And I've been in touch with Wayne for some time, a great set of skills to sort of complement mine with his investigative work and managerial acumen. He knows human nature. He knows what we're going to come against. We've been testing the waters, and we just got to not be, coming forward with too much information at the moment, because we don't want that to be taken,
Yes, I agree 100%. I mean, we've had several meetings about this, and it's sad. It's sad that it has to come to this point, but I don't think, well, I mean, I think we had an idea because of past circumstances that stuff has been leaked out, that stuff has been used, right? Like Amelia says it perfectly, almost like a spiritual warfare and protection. I agree.
Yeah, that's bang on.
Yeah.
So Wayne,
we had to go through some changes in Team Templar with certain people. Like any investigation group, sometimes you just have to, you got to weed people out and things like that. And it really started to come together between Shawn and myself when we really come up with a strong commitment to each other and our way of thinking. It was just so natural to work with Shawn, because it was almost like if I started a conversation, he could finish it. And if he was thinking something, I probably had been there prior. I was looking there too. And in this last 6 months, Shawn, I was telling Michelle before you got on, it's just how many times have we sent each other messages about a subject, and you had been working on it or were looking into it, and vice versa. And it's just changed the whole scope of the way we look at things in our working together. It's just such a natural flow of information. It's like it's almost magical,
It is.
Yeah. There's no accounting for that. It's just one of those things that I noticed right from the very first conversation that we're having about the connection between the Sinclair voyages, the Xeno narrative, and the different native units along those areas present in those areas where the Sinclairs and the ancient Sea Kings, shall we say, the guns, had been previously, as Vikings. But it's history is presenting itself in a different way at the moment, and it's like being on a path of discovery for something special, without a doubt.
Oh, I completely concur with the whole special factor with all of this. I think that this is something that is going to tie up a lot of loose ends. Let's face it, a lot of history has been kept from us. A lot of history has never been figured out. Therefore, if it's not been figured out, it mustn't be a thing, which again, we're getting into academia. Do you think, do you guys think that a lot of this centers around the Sinclairs? Because when most people think Templar, they think Sinclair. They go hand in hand, especially coming here.
Yeah. I think the complete connection between the Sinclairs and the Templars is yet to be fully discovered. But from what I can see, there was an inner order that perhaps was involved in other things rather than just the Crusades, shall we say. And I believe it was that order that Prince Henry Sinclair was either a part of later, post dissolution of the order, and there were others involved in that within the realm of protecting sacred relics. A bigger remit than warfare, shall we say. Now, I was going to mention this previously, but I'd found out recently that when the Templars in the Paris Temple had decided something was going down with the papacy, shall we say, and the King of France at the time, history has it that they went to La Rochelle, and of course that's where the Templar fleet that was there was supposed to have set sail from, bearing skull and crossbone flags. So I hear. I haven't found direct evidence of that yet, but believe you me, I believe it's on the right track. But the treasure originally came from Cyprus, where the remnants of the main order of Templars, Jacques de Molay, the last Grand Master, they come from Cyprus to the Paris Temple with that treasure. Now, obviously, close connection to the Middle East there, but it makes sense to me that there was something very, very special amongst that treasure. 50 carts, so they say. Maybe I got that wrong. Several carts and 50 knights and an entourage of men-at-arms and the big fleet which awaited them to escape. In my opinion, they went to Scotland. Not all of them, of course, the Portugal side of things, but that's not really my area. And I'm looking at Ireland, west of Scotland, northeast Scotland, the Orkneys, Shetlands, and going across then to Wayne, where Wayne set up, the Wisconsin project, and the connection about how all that treasure, shall we say, in sacred relics went to somewhere else. I believe it's in North America.
About 2 months ago, me and Shawn were talking about these travels, and I came across some bits and pieces of information. This is the first time I ever seen this, that the guns, the Zenos and the Sinclairs were on the same ship and went to 5 landing spots in North America. I'm not going to say where they landed.
Right.
But
thank you.
I thought, like an investigator, I looked at this kind of sideways. Then it said that in Nova Scotia, they found a cannon. And they described this cannon. And then I did the back research on it. And it's in the Maritime Museum. And they described how the cannon was built, how it was banded. And in this side information, it talked about the Zenos and the Sinclairs using this cannon to fight over in Europe. It's the first time that cannon warfare was ever used. Now, this puts the guns on the same ship. And you know about the Westford Knight. So this is the first time I ever come across the information of putting all 3 together. And in the side information, they said there was at least 100 Templars. I don't know if they used the word Templars, but there was at least 100 men on that ship. And some of them stayed with the ship and some went further inland. And here's the really amazing thing is no one's ever looked at the Native American side of it. That's where I come in, a Mohican elder. The Native Americans in Canada along the St. Lawrence, their history is, you can just see the Templar influence. They have tattoos of cross pâtés, of anchors, of quatrefoils on their persons, and these are drawn by French Jesuits, and that's a sharing of cross-cultural information, and we have expanded that Native American history and showed how the Templars would have worked with Native Americans and influenced, and be allowed to travel further into Wisconsin and some of the routes that they took. So we're looking at things that no one's considered. I don't believe that's considered, but we see this connection. We made this connection, and we have the proof of this connection.
Well, what I like is that you have also reached out to other Native American people, both sides of the border. I won't get into that either, because that's just extra information. But it's interesting how they're very eager to work with you on this, and they're giving you other information, which to me just shows an amazing act of unity. And they have their own oral history. And now you're sitting here and you've also been speaking with some of your other elders who also remember saying, yes, I've seen this. And you went out and you found that. It's so,
this was just mind-blowing. This Native American elder, his son called me. He knows about what we're working on in general. And he says, my dad come across this stone one time when he was working, and he gave me a brief description. And I was
how many years ago was that?
What?
Like, how many years ago?
About 35 years ago.
Wow. See, there you go.
And we had a family logging business, and we were working back there for years. I started off working in the woods when I was about 12 years old. I think I was 14 before I realized my name wasn't Fetch Wood. So that I understood the forest, and things like that. And so we had built these roads back there and built bridges and things. And so I said, I got to go talk to his dad. I know his dad very well. So I went over and talked to him, and I said, Joe, can you tell me what you found? So he let me videotape his statement, which is always good to have because it's in the first person. He tells me what he found. And I said, could you describe it? Oh, he says, yes, I was digging fill for a road to fill up the holes so that the trucks could go in and out. He said, about 35 years ago. And I come across a stone. It was almost kind of rectangular in shape. And he said it was so big, he said it would straighten out the springs in a pickup truck. So it was very heavy. And I said, well, what was unusual about it? He said there was Roman numerals carved in it. And I'm like,
wow.
Are you kidding me? He said, no, I know what Roman numerals are. And then he tells me what they were. Oh, my gosh. So it wasn't too many days later, I went back there and I did some research, and I had to go back again to just to validate it. And I sent these pictures.
35 years later, it's amazing you found it at all. Sorry, I know we have a lag.
I kind of stumbled on it. My brother went with me, and we're looking at these rocks because he was able to remember the general location. And the road's about 2.5 miles long. So you start walking in the woods and start tracing these old roads, that gets a little tedious. But then we're in the location, and then he yells, he says, what do you think about this rock? And I'm looking at it, and I says, holy man, it could be, you don't know. So I take some pictures of it, but then I had to go back. Then I had to look at this, like an investigator. It's got 3 things going for it. It's got the same general size. It's in the location, and it's got the Roman numerals in it. I don't know what else a person would have to have. So I zinged these off to Shawn right away for his validation. And unfortunately, he's in Scotland. He can't be there in first person to touch it and see it. But I'll let Shawn address that a little bit, what he's seen from the pictures, if you'd like to.
That has to be difficult when you're looking at those and other photos virtually. What were your thoughts on this specific find?
Well, like a lot of the carvings that have been discovered, these have been made by hammer and chisel, in my opinion. And there's ways of examining the photographs in terms of, turning them into black and white, looking for shadows as well, and changing the mist and that type of thing on them, polarizing, areas that need to be looked at. So there is a certain amount that you can tell. And the numerals, Roman numerals, usually you would see those, for instance, on either as a message, or it could also be practical mason's mark for where a certain stone fits, for instance, as well as a message. Most masons' marks, for instance, stonemasons, which the Templars had their own stonemasons. They took the same oath as the knights.
Mm-hmm.
It's they were involved in the creation of the cathedrals in Europe. They had their own training masters, and they had a whole culture of building stones for God.
Mm-hmm.
And I see signs of that on the Wisconsin site. Now, I pride myself on the fact that my formative years were spent in North America. I'm not just a Brit coming over with an academic view. I lived in these places. I visited them. Like Wayne, I was in the woods and stuff. I learned to chop wood over there from my my step grandfather, who was Polish. And when I was over there, he used to go, "You need to learn to chop wood, Shawn," he said. And then from there on in, they called me the young calf. But I was brought up, and right till up to 2014, I was returning to the USA, to Duluth, as a visitor, and sometimes staying up to 3 months.
Mm-hmm.
So, I've got a great connection with Canada and North America, and especially from being on the lakes as well. But I believe that that's part of the fate of what's happening now in terms of meeting Wayne, and it's quite unusual when you start looking back in your own family tree and you realize that there's some anomalies as well, because one of my ancestors lived in Canada, who was making uniforms. He was a tailor making uniforms for the British for, I think, maybe the War of Independence or something like that. And then returned back to the UK, but of Scots descent. So there's a lot of stuff here for me to resolve, but resolving it is bringing the bigger picture into focus as well. So it's a win-win situation, and then obviously the connection with Wayne. But just back to the idea on the chisels and why stonemasons' marks are generally straight. Usually, a stonemason, when he's finished his work or job, to get paid, he marks that work, and it's examined by the master mason, who says, "Oh yeah, this is good enough, Jack or Bill. Mm-hmm. That's worth 25 shillings," and he gets paid. But a mason's mark is designed to identify the person through craft pride of what is created. And also, there was a bit of a cipher code going on as well, which you see in Templar cipher codes as well, and it kind of merges. I need to do a lot more investigation on mason's marks. There's more to them than meets the eye,
Do you think if we're talking about mason's marks, do you think that there's something more to be found in that area?
Oh yeah, I think it's probably, it's going to be covered in mason's marks, or a code, a cipher, which they would use. They didn't have any form of technology, we know that, and so they would mark stones for the people that were following behind.
Right.
if you're venturing 100 miles, probably Wayne knows more about this than me, but if you're going 100 miles into the woodlands, you have to have a path. You have to be able to mark where you've been for other people to have an idea of where you're going, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And I believe that on the Wisconsin site, we're going to go into that, but some of the navigation type wheels that are on the Mohican site is just, it's like, oof, you know, I've got hair standing on the back of my neck, you know, after seeing them.
Right. Well, I know I've seen some images myself, and it's just been like, you sit in awe and you realize that, oh my gosh, this is something very spectacular. It's just going to be, I don't know. To me, whenever history gets revealed, as it should, of course, I love history, but it's also very personal for me also with all of this. Yeah. But it's, you know, living near the Great Lakes and seeing, you know, coming in from the northern part, you know, northern Canada, and just seeing what kind of a feat it would have been to get from, let's say, the East Coast through, you know, coming in through central Canada or coming in even through the St. Lawrence, because living near the Welland Canal and seeing what a lot of these Lakers and ocean liners have to do to get over to where, let's say, Wisconsin would be, and knowing full well that they could only go by water for so long before they would have to go inland on foot. So that's, to me, it just shows you the grandeur of what they were up against. You know,
one of the most amazing things about the Wisconsin project is, and working with Shawn and yourself, is that we get a chance to tell the true stories about two cultures of people. No one's ever looked at the Native Americans in this way, and the accomplishments that they've done and how they assisted the Templars in coming. By back tracing these routes, just a quick reference to the Roman stone, as I named it, just for a name. I marked that in line junction with the other sites, and I'm leaning very heavily that it's a marker stone. Because the way it lines up, and then when I line up the other sites, there's a building site too that Shawn hasn't even been to yet, and there's probably 200 cut stones, and some of the keyways that they made there is just amazing. So when I backtracked all of this and linked all of these sites together, they form a line of travel, and they're following the waterways, and they would have been shown these waterways by the Native Americans. There would have been very little portaging that they would have had to do to go all the way from down to St. Lawrence, through the Great Lakes, and up into Wisconsin. And what people sometimes don't realize, that during that time, the portaging wasn't as difficult as people would have thought, because the great pines that covered the United States, you know, they were 4 or 5 feet across, and they were spacious. There wasn't all this ground cover that you see today. And the Native Americans, they knew all of these trails. They had massive trading trails all the way from Mexico, all the way up to Canada, all the way up to Nova Scotia. So they understood these routes very well. They've been using them for thousands of years. They were trading obsidian, they were trading gold, they were moving copper. And there's all of these things for some reason, and I always bring this up, when the Templars met the Native Americans must have been impressed enough by the type of people they were, because they were tattooing their foreheads and their bodies with the Templar crosses, with quatrefoils and anchors and pyramids up, as above and below. You see it in the work of Mi'kmaq. In her work, she's a poet, and she's got the 8-pointed cross. She's got the Jerusalem cross. She's got the steps of the temple. The 3 crosses. You just can't make that. If anybody who doesn't make that connection to the Native Americans has missed a great deal. And that's what Team Templar is really about, is about taking these great cultures and looking through the chatter and just using the most simplistic way to look at it in the truthful way and making these great connections that I feel we have.
I agree. Amelia also makes a good point. Obsidian is a stone of protection. That, and yeah, among others, but it is one of the most probably widely used and well known. So it's interesting that falls into all of this mix without a doubt.
Well, Wisconsin has no obsidian, and they found obsidian in some graves. And the obsidian, they were able to trace it back to Washington State. And, that just proved that there was travel. Shawn, I got to ask you to tell this story about your experience with the Abenakis and how they wanted you to look at a doctor. This is fantastic. I'm sorry to jump around.
No, this is good. It's a good story.
Yeah, well, it was. I returned to the USA to Vermont, and I was staying near Lake Champlain. It was actually winter, and the Abenaki were fishing on the lake, and I never went out onto the lake. I was watching them specifically, and I got talking to the then custodian chief of the tribe, which was the old chief's daughter, and we were going to think about a project for how they could learn to carve their own grave marker symbols with clan symbols like porcupines and some of these animals I've not even heard of, but wolf and bear, all denominated and marked. And they weigh you up, they weigh people up. They've got like a sixth sense, I guess. And these are people that are tuned into the land. And so I felt like there was a rapport going on between us, and I was honored enough to be shown their mantra, shall we say, of life. And I learned a lot from them. And then they said, by the way, we want you to come to our museum. And I said, oh, okay, yeah, no problem. And we went over, and I heard the abysmal news that their native females had been many of them had been forced sterilized. I don't know the exact date, but it was probably maybe 1910 or maybe 1920 or something like that. So of course this was news to me. And then they said, but we know this guy who did it, and we know who his line is, and because we trust you, if you find any of his or know any of his ancestors where they are, he said, let us know. And they had a portrait painted by one of their own that was perfect. But this was the guy that was responsible for sterilizing everybody there, the females. And so I was honored in a way by them showing me this portrait, and could I help bring him to justice somehow of what he'd done. So of course that was probably family. It was tricky, but it was I really felt for them, and I'm sure that if I go back which I will, I'll be doing some more work with the Abenaki on with learning about their culture as well as helping them learn stone carving.
And it's very sad. It's just one of many stories, in my opinion, of corruption. But you know what? I think we're living in a time now of truth. I think people are fed up, and now is the time for truth. It is a time to come forward and somehow make things right before before even more information gets suppressed. Right?
Yes.
Because you see
it's
it
a time
happening.
of great discovery.
Yes. Yes. So
And
now
and
sorry, go ahead.
and very often you don't get to work with like-minded people like yourself and Shawn and Amelia. And I just a quick mention about another gentleman who's helping with research, Ken Kessler. He's been a great assistant to me in research.
Yes.
And I just like to thank him for his help.
Mm-hmm.
But we're all sitting here today, like-minded people. We want to tell the truth. We want to tell the story. And we have such great facts to tell it with. And it's not made up stuff. It's not trying to throw smoke out there. The smoke and mirrors, look over here, you know. This is some hard evidence. It's in granite. And like Amelia said, no wood. So we're pretty lucky.
It's been hard enough evidence that people have been snagging it and trying to dig for more, and in some cases with lack of integrity. But I think with that being said, you can't dispute what's there. And that's just what you see. You can imagine how much hasn't even been uncovered. You have 5 sites right now.
Oh.
5 sites, right? Yeah. What can you say about the 5 sites? And then I'll get to a couple of other questions from Amelia. Whoever wants to go.
The first site I found was 40 years ago. I just thought it was a cave. And then the second site, site 2, was actually a cross pate carved on a rock. Well, that brought me back to the first site, the tomb, the cave. And as I examined it more inside of there, you could see 3 crosses carved. Mm-hmm. Well, thinking logically and how people would travel back then following the river, went across the river where I know these large stone structures were, these large rocks, and started investigating there. And a couple of years of checking these rocks out, you can see starts of what animals were carved into rocks, and Native Americans didn't carve granite. So it was I think it was kind of like an honor that they were carving these animal symbols into these rocks for them in appreciation. And then right next to it, there's a carved Latin fish. I mean, come on, you know, where do you get this? And then just a short distance away is the Roman stone, right on the same river. And then going back the opposite way, I won't give directions. You've got the building site, but there's got to be at least 200 cut stones. And I know I found 3 keystones and some other stones they got to be rectangular shaped, 1.5 feet by 2.5, 3 feet long and 18 inches wide. Shawn can guess on that better than I could, and they're lifted up out of the ground. They're quarried out of the ground, laying there. And you've seen some of them pictures, Michelle.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. They're very impressive. Very impressive. And you see the connections going back to, you know, a lot of the European carvings, would you say, Shawn?
Yeah, a lot of European symbolism. You know, I really need to get over there to, you know, to take some molds and silicon molds so that we can see what's in them, you know, make a reverse image, shall we say, because most of that carving is incised apart from the wheel cross, the navigational type aid, which was I know about this. Every time I see it, you know, it's something that I've studied in great depth. You know, I was involved with lost relics of the Knight Templar, validating stones up at Kilmartin, and where there is an actual ring cross Knight Templar tombstone, which is without a doubt a Templar tombstone amongst gallo glass Scottish Norwegian cultural mercenaries. What was, I mean, this is around the same time as Bannockburn, and you know, again, there was speculation about the Templars. Well, it's more than speculation. There's some hard evidence coming to light now that they were involved in Bannockburn, fighting with the Scots against the English. One particular tombstone which I visited, it, rings all the bells, and I can prove that the exact type of tombstone, this particular ring cross, is totally verified from another site in Edinburgh, which a friend of mine, a master stonemason, discovered and sent me the pictures. And not only that, by chance, he also connected to Ian Sinclair without not knowing the connection to me. So, I mean, he was living in the northeast of Scotland, and by chance he was at this particular place where he met this guy, by chance, if you can call it that. And so you've got two forms of tombstones. You've got the ring cross tombstones, which disguise a Templar cross, and you've got the ring cross, not the ring cross, the 8-pointed steering wheel cross, I call it, or ship's wheel cross, which is also being previously used as a navigational aid. And that comes on the later Templar tombstones, post-dissolution, which I believe Prince Henry Sinclair was involved with. So I've got, I've done a 10,000 word paper on them, which Scottish major heritage organisations use now to validate Templar symbolism. So, and I'm not an archaeologist or an academic. I've got a good degree. I'm a technical expert to some extent, and I've got a good way of approaching problems. But when I saw some of the symbolism on the Mohican site where Wayne is an elder, where I was privileged to see them, I'm thinking, well, they're not carving a symbol of an apple here. They're not carving a wolf head. They're not carving anything that looks like shall we say, a longbow, or these are all symbols that I've seen before in context to building design and building stones being marked with stonemasons' chisels, purposely for a reason. So, we can't diminish what these stones hold. But to me, the what shall we call it, the edifice that is on the Mohican site was this stone reused? Was it there prior to this? Is the thing that I'm fighting with at the moment. To me, it looks very, very similar to an older culture has been there and rebuilt by a medieval culture, shall we say, with knowledge of how to move stone, how to cut it, how to mark it. In order to mark granite with a chisel, you need a very good tempered tool, tempered in a special way to actually cut it. I'm looking at V-cut incisions all over the place, and a lot clearer several hundred years ago than they are now, but we can still take casts of what's there and get an idea. But I think this is the beginning of something else. I think it's the path to the discovery of where the Templar relics went in North America somehow. And I've also been working with previously with another guy down in New Mexico that has got fabulous stones as well. What I would call very similar to some of the carvings on, shall we say, a renowned teaching aid. I can't go into detail with this stuff now because it's just going to give the show away.
No, of course.
It's we have to. Our challenge at the moment is to get this information together, which is what we're in the process of doing, so that we can sign, seal, and deliver it.
I agree. Amelia asks, do either of you struggle with telling it all?
Oh my gosh.
Every day. Every day.
I'd like to run outside and I'd like to call everybody I know and tell them. That's last summer I was able to find a navigational wheel, and seeing the Roman stone and the navigational wheel and everything, it just making sense that they were following this river. And we got 5 points of pattern now, 5 points of travel, or 5 points of activity. And Shawn, I have to agree with you. I think the tomb site itself was probably revisited twice.
Right.
It was repurposed, and I think, I'm just going to throw this out there, I think the Templars came back at a different time because they knew of this area, had learned of it, and then came back and put their marks there. That's the sense I'm getting after, I find a cross pate, I find the crosses in the tomb, I find the navigation wheel, and I was led to the Roman stone. I want to scream, somebody please bring your cameras and, come take a look and let's change history.
Yeah. Well, it would. I mean, I don't think people understand the magnitude of what this is really going to entail once you get full into it, and once the right puzzle pieces come into play and the right people come into play. I really think this is going to be something that's people have no idea. They just have no idea. You don't even have to have an interest in the Knights Templar, because some people might think to themselves, oh, okay, well, that's great, but they don't realize it's a substantial part of North American history, because there's a lot of stereotypes when it comes to both, for example, the Templars. I've had to correct people many times on just that. Okay, there's stereotypes when it comes to the North American Indian people. They don't realize, like, no, there was a lot of working together here, being welcomed with open arms. Like there's it's a story of, like you said, two people, many people, cultures, because the Knights Templar came from cultures from all over Europe and England, and even going back as far as like the Muslims. Like, I mean, they were really all over the place. To turn around and then basically just act as though this is a very inconsequential piece of history, I think people are going to be very, very surprised. Amelia here has another question. We know it's difficult to dispute the evidence. Where there is truth, you will find trolls. Yes. Are you prepared for the naysayers?
Yeah, I
Go
think
ahead,
we
Shawn.
can.
I'll respond.
I think we can handle them. Andrew Sinclair had all that, and they try to unhinge you or do that, but we'll steer this ship steady through the storms or whatever, and I don't think we'll have a problem from that. But a good saying is, what's meant for you won't go past you. And I truly believe that we're on to an immense voyage of discovery, which is for everybody. It's not us. We happen to be involved at the rock face, but others will join us. I'm sure other people are going to get involved in this, and it's not something that's the place where only the people from the ivory tower can be involved. This is going to be involving everybody, and I think that will bring more discovery than anything else once we get everybody mobilized.
Yeah, I agree with that as well. I think it will open other doors, moving forward, because we have to figure out, and I'm sure this has crossed everyone's minds, I know it surely has crossed minds, where did they go when they left Wisconsin? Was that a final stop?
I don't know if they did.
Okay.
it looks like they were trying to stay here because all of the cut stones that have been worked. That's kind of my feeling, because no one's going to take this time to quarry and cut all of these stones. If you're just passing through, you're going to tread lightly. And it wasn't their land to build on. They would have to get permission. Mm-hmm. And when you were talking about the naysayers, there's this one researcher, he contacted me, and he's got about 7-8 books. And, he was telling me there's no temples here. Templars were never here, and your work is terrible, blah, blah, blah. Wow. And I said, you know what? I said, you're still trying to prove that that Bacon was Shakespeare. I says, I can't deal with that. I says, I can only deal in granite and the crosses and the marks that are in that. Mm-hmm. And he just didn't know what to say after that.
The proof is in the pudding, son, right there. That's what I gotta say. If it's there, you know, it's not like the Native American people were going to go starting to put these carvings with tools that they didn't have, and carvings that they maybe were just starting to get an understanding of.
Yeah.
Right? Which you get an understanding of it if you're integrating with another people or a culture.
Excuse me.
You were learning from one another.
The earliest contact would have been up in Canada along the Nova Scotia and St. Lawrence. And that's where we see a lot of that symbolism in their work, their artwork, tattoos and things like that.
Right.
And that spread further into inland, because the Stockbridge, Munsey, however you want to say it, was a French name for the Stockbridge, which wasn't even the correct name for that tribe of Indian, the Narragansetts out in New York. That's where my grandmother was from. They always talked about the legend of Cornhair, and how that John Sargent, who was a missionary, was missionarying to the Indians and trying to get them to the Gospels and the Dutch in Hudson Bay, and they just adamantly refused. And they said, well, why are you refusing? Why are you pushing back so hard? Because we're afraid of the people in the longboats that would come back and punish us. And they were referring to the Vikings. Mm. So these travels had went on, in the late 900s, early 1000. And then these people knew of these travels. They left these maps for others to follow, which the Templars followed. Mm-hmm. And there's one account where they found 4 Jewish phylacteries that were sealed in leather in an Indian graveyard that was dug out by Joseph Merrick. I said his name now, so it's too late. But the Indians, they didn't have no use for these. They wouldn't be writing Jewish phylacteries in original Hebrew language. Someone had to bring that there and give that to them, and it was, this a gift, a gesture. So these travels were happening, and I really have to agree with Shawn. I think there was more than one travel back to Wisconsin. I think there was actually a couple to work the tomb and move these stones, and the Templars came later.
Shawn, what's your thought?
Yeah, well, yeah, no, I mean, I'm just trying to picture myself back in the day, and you would have to establish a keep or somewhere that was that you could cover and build around it with stone, even if it had been already there and pulled down or something. Who knows? But whatever they needed a place to keep what they were moving. They would probably have to rest and recover. This is intrepid voyage, but that was what was necessary to escape their enemies. They wanted to establish a new Jerusalem, and that thought process would be going through their minds post dissolution of the Templars. they still had whatever they found, which we can go into that later. But when you see the tomb site, for instance, first thing that struck me was that the boulder itself, it's like a tomb opening. It's perfectly rectangular. It would be a great place to store one particular type of artifact, and also from in a scientific way, because dense stone like granite would protect against rays or radiation and those types of things. And the more I read into history, the more I realize that if you look at the Bible, we're looking at a very strange, to some extent, scientific experiments going on with weapons that of biblical stature. It's we limit ourselves in this in the way that we assimilate information. We need cultural changes to become enlightened to what we are about, and I think the Templars were ahead of the game, at the time, and no wonder they were running, trying to get away, especially in England and Scotland, because the papacy had sent in the Inquisition, and they caught Templars and they tortured them and they extracted information. That was all part of the process, This was going on, and yes, of course they'd want to escape with the sacred relics and what they had to safe places in the world. And they had the maps. Of course, they made decisions. They had an inner circle, I think, making those decisions. And they had a vast, huge resource of vessels. Of course, they were going to use that.
Mm-hmm.
And I've actually just been reading about that now, and the Templar vessels, and they were using, they were either contracting in, shall we say, favored groups to help them transport pilgrims to the Middle East, or they had their own vast network of vessels, in the same way that the Knights Hospitaller also had ships in the Mediterranean. They transmuted to, in my own opinion, into a sea power post dissolution of the order, and that enabled them to travel to unknown areas as far down as Chile, as far as I'm concerned, because I've seen the evidence down there as well. But again, we have to. I was down there for several months investigating anomalous sites there also, and of course, we've got things that we're keeping our powder dry to some extent. We're not going to release all that information.
No.
I want to, but it's
I know.
You're not. It's like get back.
I know.
I know what you're like,
the whip at you right now.
Get back, yeah.
Reeling you in. No.
Yeah.
No, it is really difficult because there is so much exciting things happening with this site, and it is going to be not just mind-blowing, it's going to be groundbreaking. It's going to change history, and I think that needs to happen. History needs to be told. Proper history needs to be told.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, too much of it was suppressed. And I think Amelia had it right. I think the world is ready. I think people are fed up with being, with everything just being pushed aside and being told half truths or no truths, or it's time. We live in a time that, don't you think it is about time that people start being told the truth? Come on. It's been how many thousands of years?
An awakening. It's kind of an awakening.
That's a good way to put it.
And to tell you how far this has gone, about 6 months ago, I get this message from a guy from Rome. He says, "Are you the Wayne Murphy that found that Templar cross pate in Wisconsin?" I said, "I guess I could be. How can I? What do you want? Because I don't know anybody in Rome." But he heard about it, and we talked a little bit, and then he sent me a triangle picture that's on a column in a Templar church in Rome. It's the exact same one in Wisconsin. So I sent that to Hamilton White and Shawn, and it's just perfect. And in Hamilton and his travels, with Templar artifacts and stuff, he says, "Yeah, Wayne, I've seen that many times." He says, and he says, matter of fact, he said, "I noticed a lot of marks in Wisconsin site from the pictures that you shared with me, because Hamilton, he's on our team." So
but it
we
goes to
use
show
multiple
you how
sources to try.
Yeah, people are coming together already and sending you information just randomly.
Yeah.
To show you how far-reaching this really is, right? So
yeah, and they're from talking to people from all around the world, wanting to know more, and obviously they ask me, they send me questions about their research when they should really be talking to Shawn. Shawn's my mentor. He kind of guides me along. I've been able to stumble along and find a few things. But these people are asking questions about their work, and if I can help, I can help. I'm always willing to help. But there's such a hunger to know what's really happening out there. And I think that Shawn and yourself, and luckily for me, we're in that time where we're given this great gift, and we should be able to tell it now and bring it forward.
It's a calling.
Absolutely, vocation, and just by way of example, I was talking to Wayne recently, and I mentioned that the Vikings were not just pillagers and the Netflix stuff and all that. They were also intrepid explorers and had navigational maps, and they had methods of navigation that were outlawed, actually, like lodestones and pieces of metal floating on water that would give them north, and that's really where my old man came into all this, because he was involved in the Canadian Coast Guard, and he wrote policy for them. But he was into navigation from being 14 when he started at sea. So I managed to lift quite a lot of information from him just quite naturally. But recently I found that in Scotland, on the locks, in some that were spaced close together, Viking ships would investigate where they could perhaps settle peaceably. They ended up settling peaceably at certain times, and they had a smaller type of vessel, which maybe for 16 to 18 men or something like that, and women, and they would explore with these smaller vessels. And recently, a big heritage organization has come up with the fact that they portaged these vessels by dragging them from one lock to the other. But when they came across originally from, say, Norway, they brought stone ballast with them. And these stones have been identified on the side of locks where they dropped the ballast to make the vessel as light as possible, so that it could drag them over, a land area of, it could be 500 yards to perhaps even half a mile.
Wow.
And by identifying that this stone was not indigenous, was not from Scotland, you begin to build up a picture of what was going on and what was happening. It wasn't just about Viking pillages and warfare. They were exploring. And of course, it was they had a frontiersman approach to world exploration as well, and that never went away because a man put a cloak on with a red cross on his heart. It was this was about finding interesting places to live and exist in sort of harmony as much as possible with nature. And another thing that I found as well, which this will interest you because I sent Wayne some of the details. I had privilege to see a university paper from the USA, which identifies purely carved stones, not from this country, from Europe, and in certain areas which were discovered in forests in North America. This is a university paper. Now, I've got half the paper. It also identifies European language as translated through Native American language.
Wow.
So, yeah, and
Wow.
so you see there's a cross-cultural symbiosis thing going on.
I'm screaming inside, just so you know.
Yeah,
I am.
And so this is. I'm looking now and thinking, well, what was the true nature of those natives in North America? Where did they come from? Where were the connections? What groups were they connected to? This is an interesting set of history, isn't it? And what goes around comes around, and we may find that the connection emanates from the same source.
I am just speechless with this one. That is fantastic because it shows an active network. There was like networking going on between different tribal people, and I mean to come out and like I have no words to come out and do a university paper. It shows significance because why would they otherwise? Seriously, like there has to be something there.
When you talk about explorers and things like that, when people
I know
going
they're
out
limited.
and explore, we got a little time lapse here with the internet.
We do,
when people are going out exploring, if they don't know their creator, they'll go look for their creator through the creation. And man is driven by that. As much as he may not want to realize that there is a creator, he's always looking for him and through other things. And Native Americans were able to see the creator through the creation. And just about anybody who's a great explorer, they're unsettled in themselves because they can't find that creator. So they go looking for creation to explore. And in that creation, they eventually find the creator. It just comes full circle,
It does. It does. On that note, we're going to make a very quick station ID. You guys are listening to The Outer Realm with Shawn Williamson and Wayne Murphy. We are discussing, of course, the Knights Templar in North America. We're discovering or talking about this new discovery in Wisconsin. With so much, I wish we could just share. But it goes to show you how much is being shared tonight and how much more there actually is. We are fully sponsored by the amazing people over at Folgers Coffee and Dr. Snick, a.k.a. the Sonic Surgeon. And we're going to have a little treat for you guys because Wayne sent us in another commercial. Here we go. I'm going to play it right now.
Good morning, everyone. Wayne Murphy and Shawn Williamson from Team Templar, North America. When it comes to change, we're all about change, especially when it comes to changing history. But there's just one thing that we won't change, and that's the good taste of Folgers coffee in the morning, or anytime, as a matter of fact. Taste that you can count on. just like the history that we plan to change. Folgers is a history of its own that will never change. Have a good day, everybody from Team Templar, North America. Folgers.
Love it. Woo, I love it.
Brilliant. Yeah, excellent that. Excellent.
Exactly. How'd you like that one, Bubbles? She's having internet problems. She's on her phone. There's a storm rolling over. But no, that was fantastic. I keep telling people, send in your commercials, and I thought it would be appropriate to go ahead and play that tonight. So there it is. There you have it. Yes, Team Templar North America did something special, got the banner in the back, not the usual banner. So we're very excited about this. So where do we go from here now? I mean, there's a lot of discoveries to be made, obviously a lot of validating. So why don't we start with you, Wayne, because you're boots on the ground right now. So what are your plans moving forward in the next little bit? We'll narrow it down for you, maybe the summer months.
I think one of the things that we really need to do is let people know how legitimate we are, and we're not just gonna, if we're gonna tell you a story, it's gonna start out like this: once upon a time. And this is not that kind of a story. And we're looking for financial support, obviously, and someone to produce this and direct this and bring this to fruition. I don't have the skills to do that, or the monetary aspect to do that. It can be a great documentary, and this will not only encompass Wisconsin and the St. Lawrence and the Native Americans along the way. This goes to Scotland, to Roslyn Chapel, that goes to the Shetlands, and we can show the connections of, say, something as simple as beads that were found in Alaska they look exactly like the same beads that were found in Shetlands and graves. And Shawn has talked about these same type of beads being found, and I believe Shawn, wasn't it, in Templar coffins. So we're looking for that persons, studio, TV company, whatever. Come on in, give us a hand, and be part of history. Change, help us.
And you have to contact this guy. It's not going to be as easy as you think, but it will definitely be worth it. So, exactly. Yes. Right, and so as you move forward, then obviously the objective is to find more discoveries. We have 5 so far, and you're going to keep moving forward and seeing how many more you can find, how they're all connected. And then we move to Shawn. So Shawn, over the course of the next few months, what are you going to be hoping to achieve with all of this?
Well, I've got a well, I would imagine, of information that's not been released, and I know that there's a bigger path sort of opening up, and I'd like for us all at Team Templar to have a starting point in the north of Scotland, and I think that would be great spiritually for us all, but for Wayne as well, but to see where all these adventures and voyaging started from. And just by the very nature of that, then perhaps that will reawaken something else. But I could see how, media would be very interested in that prospect, and especially with specialized knowledge that would be revealed on this in this situation for us all. And again, you're the media person, Michelle and Amelia. I mean, the idea would be to travel all over the north of Scotland, to the Orkneys, to the Shetlands, and then of course across to Wisconsin, and maybe Newfoundland and Nova Scotia as well en route. So it's nothing. I don't think it's a big ask in the world of media to transport people to these different sites to make something with something great with the knowledge that we've got. But we're not going to give that knowledge away. We'll keep it, and it will be, saved, enshrined in a book, for instance, or whatever. But I would imagine that a really good media company will pick this up at some point through your help, Michelle.
Coming from someone who spent like 2 decades in media, I can assure you there's a lot of different steps that need to be observed. And I think, also knowing media as I do, that whoever takes this on, or whoever we choose to take this on, because there are a lot of eyes on this already. We already have said no to, 1 or 2 prospects, because it does have to be done properly. It can't be done with just a formula. It can't be done to save something else. It needs to be handled on its own merit for what it is. It is a story that is, it's a story that happened and needs to be told, not just from the standpoint of the discovery, but from the standpoint of cultures coming together, working together, and how it evolved, because it's still evolving. Otherwise, we wouldn't be sitting here today from 3 different countries talking about this discovery. It's evolution, it's awareness, it's awakening, it's people. It's a story of people, and it has to be told with integrity, which is something that I think has lacked in some forms from the onset, and is now, everybody has to have integrity. It can't be one person. The entire team has to have that integrity, and it has to have the belief that this is about people. It's not about advancing one person or one television show. This is why it has to be done very gently, because with no integrity, it takes away the credibility, and it can't. It has to have all of those components, and it will, because it's what Team Templar is about. And with that going and being intact and going forward, we will only work with somebody who wants to come in and maintain all of that. And I truly believe if it all remains intact, it's going to be one of the greatest stories ever told.
Yeah, it'll be a real blessing to whoever picks this up to tell this story, because they're going to be given information that people have never seen before, and access to sites that very few have seen, that even realize what's there. Mm-hmm. So it not only benefits history, it will benefit quite a few other people. It'll help a lot of people out, and it's such a great adventure to tell the truth, and to be able to work directly with Shawn one-on-one and in person, and yourself, Michelle. It's just an amazing story in itself.
Yeah, it's unfolding, isn't it? So, Shawn, you have all these pictures that you have to look through. How difficult is it to be able to? It's not like being on site, but you're a master of your craft. Therefore, how do you find it easy, or do you find it really difficult to go through some of these photos to be able to validate at a glance?
Well, I'm looking for certain things, like how, the shape of an incision, for instance, and trying to work out, the size of chisel used, simple things like that. They often used wooden mallets, and when I'm carving stone or doing a piece of sculpture or something, I use nylon. They're really good. I use a nylon mallet, but prior to that, it was wooden mallets. And the thing is, had the Templar Masons or the Templar, I don't think there was many with them. I think there was perhaps a handful of what they call Templar Masons. and that they would have been doing the carving and the stone dressing with specific knowledge, and that was how they worked. But as I said before, they took one of the very similar vow to the Templars themselves, and that is apparent in a lot of the early cathedrals that the Templars were involved in building. Say Bernard of Clairvaux, for instance, had one of his brothers, one of the Cistercian brothers, was involved in training stonemasons in Germany, for instance, and there was a specific denomination of Templar Masons and other crafts as well, joiners and lay brothers, and it was a huge complex, almost like a state within a state, shall we say. And that's why I think they became dangerous to the status quo. As I discussed with Wayne before, their raison d'etre was to re-establish the house of King David, and in many cases, some of these knights had more in common with Jerusalem than they did with Europe, even though they were of European descent. So you have a lot of cross pollination, shall we say, of cultures going on here, and I think that was not seen as a problem. I mean, and I think that's why when they were looking into Native Americans, for instance, they probably ended up getting on well with them. But as I said, there's a deeper level to that, in as much as I think that there's almost a biblical connection between the knights and where the Native Americans came from originally. They weren't always there. Many of them journeyed from other places to get there, migrated, shall we say. And there's such a diversity of cultures within them that you'd have to be mad to think anything otherwise. Different ways that they dress, different hairstyles, so many different denominations of culture, and I think there's no smoke without fire, that they knew where these peoples came from. There was a sect of biblical information that they all shared from, I don't have specific evidence for that, but I'll find it, because
not yet,
I'm digging through Andrew's papers as well all the time, and it's almost, you could write huge volumes on this stuff, but we have to make it so that it's accessible to all.
No, I agree. Do you find a lot of the information with this discovery? Have you found a lot in Andrew's papers?
I have, yeah, absolutely, without a doubt. And I've also got the scientific establishment version of events as well, in carbon dating processes that he was involved in paying for as an absolutely #1 premium academic from Cambridge, where he was a don. So we've got that side, to our sword as well. We're a two-edged sword. Myself and Wayne and you and Hamilton and Amelia, we've got that side balanced out with the the heavy academic stuff from Andrew. So it's pulling it together and going forward with the team.
I think it's great, and I believe that Carl will be coming on board. I have a meeting with them this afternoon, so I think you have a lot of a lot of people coming together. But in a way, it's almost as though Andrew is a part of all of this, because I think with you using his research, it's sort of bringing him into light, his research to light. You're essentially visualizing a dream for him.
Yeah, absolutely, because we talked about this as well. But it's as he used to recount to me. He used to say, and something. Shawn, he said, it's all in the great chain of the living and the dead.
Right.
We may think, we're different to some extent in the way we are, but it's surprising how wise the dead are, and
yeah.
From things that happen from those that have passed over, and you get leads, and again, this is about the nature of time, and he's involved in my book as well, which I'm not saying too much about at the moment, but that's going to be released quite soon.
Right.
And we're all on in the right direction with that, and we're going to be meeting some very interesting characters as well that are involved in this culturally and technically, shall we say? But that's on another path.
Oh, that's the next show. Yes.
Yeah.
Amelia makes a good point here. She goes, I often wonder how many North Americans are descendants of these knights who ventured here and are literally unaware. Very possible, obviously. I think they definitely would have integrated.
Yeah, well, it's funny, isn't it? How I know exactly what Amelia means, because people, there's a crying out of a return to a sense of chivalry and something that a code of practice, shall we say, that everybody can be involved in, and many people come forward with, I wonder if one of my ancestors was a knight, or because it's almost like they want something good to be involved with. And when I say good, I don't mean weak, but I mean something that was a code of practice, a code of chivalry, certain things that you did, certain other things that you didn't do.
Something grand.
And something grand, and knowledge of the Bible and biblical proportions, and what the Templars were about, and how they lived their lives, the philosophy of that. And that's being really kicked out of the West, hasn't it, really, with the stuff that's going on at the moment. And we want a resurrection of a formula for helping us to exist more harmoniously.
I agree with you, and I think it's also going to tell a deeper story of really what they're about. A lot of people really don't have any idea what the Knights Templar really were about. There's a lot of assumptions. There's a lot of what you see in media, which is why it's so important moving forward with this discovery that the story be told accurately. Because, like I say, I don't know how many times I've corrected people, with just basic Templar history. So and that's stuff that's already out there, and people just, like, oh, didn't they do this or didn't they do this? No, they did not. So, it gets a little personal.
When you were talking about integration, I was talking to a researcher in Quebec, and it took a while for him to trust me, obviously, because he didn't know me. And I said, do you have any knowledge of the integration? And he said, yes, it's in his family. He said that the Vikings and the Norse integrated with the Abenaki, and the Templars integrated with the Mi'kmaq. And I said, are you sure? And he said, yeah. He says, I have the history. He says, I can prove that. And I says, so they didn't go the other way? He says, no. He says, they were pretty specific in where they integrated with and whom they integrated with. And he wouldn't tell me why, but he was very specific who integrated with whom. So.
Right. Yeah. I know. The story just gets better. The plot thickens, as they say. And moving forward, it looks like there's going to be quite a journey ahead. So before, because we're counting down to the last few minutes, so let's go with last words before we sign off. And remember, people are going to be watching tonight. This is going to be playing. Also, I'm going to stream it to the Team Templar North America, one of the Facebook pages, the bigger one. So right there.
Great. Absolutely.
Last
Fabulous.
words.
Well, just to again say thanks to everybody, and hang on to this great journey. We're all going on it together, and it's going to get very, very interesting and very, very satisfying as well.
I agree. Right?
It's been a real honor to be able to talk to everyone tonight and to bring this story forward. And it's a humbling experience, and thank you.
And this is fantastic. If anybody does have information that they feel should be included in this discovery, you can contact Shawn or Wayne. If it's media related, you have to contact me, and you all know how to do that. So, if you want to interact on the social media pages, there are 2 Team Templar North America pages. Everybody is really great at adding content. Amelia's got her eye on you, so no horsing around. I'll tell you that. But I think I like how you worded it, Shawn. This is a journey that everyone's coming along on. It's not going to be one of those locations. I mean, can you just go and visit it? No, of course not. It's like, you don't go to an archaeological site and thinking everybody can have a hand in it. However, it's not going to be the type of archaeological site where nothing is divulged. Discoveries are going to be made. And the idea here is to tell the story so everybody can be involved. And Amelia gives a big thank you both so much for this honor. Absolutely. So with that being said, guys, we've come to the end of the segment, and it will air live tonight. So everyone, I have to read my normal blip, as I always do. So big thank you to the guys for joining us this evening.
Thank you.
Wealth of information. My gosh, you guys have given us a lot to think about. Big thank you to Folgers. Big thank you to Dr. Snick. We appreciate you so much. If you guys like what you're seeing on whichever platform that you are on and watching the shows, please give us a like or subscribe to the channels. The Outer Realm has a channel. Of course, the network has several channels. Go in and give us a subscribe, because it means a lot to us and it helps us to grow. If you'd like to contact us via email, theouterrealmcontact@gmail.com, theouterrealmcontact@gmail.com. And we are looking for Dane commercials. Do it. It'll be fun. Folgers. Yes, has to be Folgers. So we will play it on the show, as you can see. It's great. And they'll just randomly show up through different segments. So they're just going to keep on going. They're going to be in the archives, which means they never go away. They're going to remain in the archives. Next week, please tune in. Wednesday evening, we welcome the return of Charles Christian, all the way from the UK, who's going to be sharing more tales of folklore with us. And Thursday evening, we welcome back Peter Penagore, who's going to be wowing us further with information on NDE's mystical experiences, the afterlife, and more. So until then, all of you behave, have a great weekend, and we will see you next week. Good night.
Bye, everybody.
Of all the lessons that we were taught in school, one of the most memorable was that in 1492, Christopher Columbus discovered North America. Since then, many theories have come forth challenging Columbus's claim. But to make any of these theories possible, we must first take a look at the countries that were even capable of taking on such an endeavor. Who would have dared to cross the turbulent Atlantic to reach this new world? Who would venture into the uncharted territory seeking its untold wealth and resources? The Phoenicians, in their search for not only gold, silver, but copper, iron, tin, and lead. The North seafarers, sometimes called Vikings, in their conquest of land and wealth. The Scottish and Welsh, who have been mentioned in medieval Catholic journals as traveling to this new world, and whose motivations are still unknown. The French, to establish a new colony and capitalize on the region's vast resources. The English, wishing to extend the crown's influence and power in the new world. Or even more compelling, a place of safe harbor for a disbanded but spirited organization of brothers, whose will and purpose was greater than the slaughter of its ranks. A place in the New World for refugees from their attack and betrayal on October 13, 1307. Was this a place for refugees that would put them beyond papal reach and papal bulls? Could this place of medieval building techniques, with its symbols and alignments, be reflective of Templar activity in the Old World? Could this be one of the many places in the region that became home for the remnants of the Knights Templar themselves? Since first making the discovery on a cold winter day in the mid-1980s, these were among the questions that were on the mind of lead investigator and tribal elder Wayne Murphy. Kind of brought everybody together, is that correct?
Well, it's quite an interesting thing the way this happened, and about the 1980s, I was hunting back in the woods. We had a large snowstorm, and me and my brother were back there, and we had about a foot of snow. He went his way, I went mine, and anybody who's a hunter appreciates having some snow and ground cover and things like that. But I was going to a new area that I've hunted for years, but I came in from a different way this time. And as I was approaching this area, I could see the river where I wanted to be, but I noticed that the land didn't look right. And as I got closer, you got to be careful going through a foot of snow because you just don't know what's underneath it. All of a sudden, I come to a rock ledge.
Oh, wow.
And as I got closer, I said, holy man, this is about 30 feet down.
Wow.
So I made my way around, and I came upon this cave, which I called a cave, having no experience at all in Templars and things like that. So I did the smart thing. I threw a large stick inside because we have wolves and bears and mountain lions, and when they didn't throw it back out, I felt pretty good.
Yeah.
So I went in, and once I got in there, I realized that this wasn't your natural cave because the walls were flat and square at 90 degrees. It's never about the catch. It's always about the hunt, the chase, looking for and finding. And it's never about the catch. It's always the hunt.